Hello and welcome to This Week in Review with Nigel Farage. Nigel, a few weeks ago, we talked about net zero and at what point people would start to question this idea of a net zero economy by 2050 or even before that. At what point people would realize that this is not entirely plausible for various reasons. And you actually said that people would realize surprisingly soon and that there would be a bit of a pushback surprisingly soon. I think I suggested it would take years, and you said it wouldn't even take years. And so sure enough, I'm going to read you some headlines. I think they're mostly from today or yesterday, which, you're right again. Net zero is a Trojan horse for the total destruction of Western society. Prepare for a people's revolution against policies that will abolish choice and impoverish millions. Next headline, the EU's net zero plan is in tatters and not a moment too soon. The bloc is backtracking on its plan to ban combustion engines. It's time for Britain to follow suit. The next one, households face net zero penalty for sticking with gas. Next one, from carbon tax to nuclear power, the battle to reach net zero. The next one, why making your home more eco-friendly could inadvertently lose you thousands of pounds. The next one, UK government gambles on carbon capture and storage despite scientists' doubts. And last but not least, the implausibility of a net zero carbon energy future is now obvious. What's going on? Why is this all popping up in the last few days?
Because it's not realistic, because it's too expensive, and because at last we're actually having a debate. And industry has started to use its voice. The German car industry have basically said, look, if you want to go all EV by 2035, you are effectively handing the entire global market to the Chinese. Yes, of course, there are lovely Teslas and all the rest of it, but basically, electric cars that could be even within the range of affordability for ordinary families would in the end come from China. So they've, voiced their concerns. They've used their muscle, which is very considerable in Brussels, and we're seeing a rowing back. Yes, you can keep your internal combustion engine provided you use this e-fuel, and that's the first really big shift that we've seen in the European Union. I think in countries like Italy, we're going to see even more pushback as time goes on, just because this country has not experienced any rise in living standards for almost a quarter of a century. The UK is still pushing full steam ahead. It's energy security day today. I mean, don't make me laugh. Yeah, energy security in a country that refuses to use its natural gas and oil resources. And it's all fronted up by a bloke called Grant Shapps, who, when he was in business, used to attend conferences under the pseudonym of Michael Green. I mean, this is the caliber of people that we have in the British cabinet. They are determined. I mean, just yesterday, Michael Gove approved a solar park in Shropshire that's the size of 75 football pitches on actually what is quite historic land around the hill called the Wrekin. There's no need to do that. If you wanted to put solar panels everywhere, put it on the roofs of factories and warehouses. And so the public are saying, what the hell is going on here? Why are we taking productive agricultural land out of production, right, at a time when food inflation is running at 17.5%? Why are we damaging our own food security? That question is being asked. And now we have the farcical situation with solar farms where the panels are so worth stealing that they have to erect massive steel walls around the solar farms. And guess who manufactures the solar panels? Yes, of course, we're back to our friends in China. So questions being asked there. Questions at last being asked about affordability. We keep being told that it's going to be cheap energy. Ed Miliband, yes, he's back. I know, it's so depressing. Ed Miliband this week leading the charge yet again for the Green Revolution. And increasingly, the general public are saying, this is boring. We've heard this time and time again, and yet we see no prospect of cheap energy. Even Shapps is admitting today that cheap energy is down the line into some point in the future. And for the Labour Party, who could be our next government, to stay, they want to actually copy in many ways Joe Biden's Inflation Reduction Act, which gives the biggest subsidies, the biggest taxpayer subsidies you've ever seen for renewables, is for the birds. So look, in the EU, politicians are waking up to what's going on. In the UK, they're blindly heading towards the cliff, but public opinion is going in the other way. And, the killer fact, and I debate this on my GB News show 2 or 3 times a week. The killer fact with all of this is the 8 billion tons of coal figure. That this year the world will burn 8 billion tons of coal. And we're looking at China, Indonesia, India, and we produce less than 1%. Why are we telling people to put heat pumps on the side of their houses at probably average £7,000 to £10,000 per household, when the rest of the world, frankly, are clearly ignoring it? So things are changing, and they will go on changing, and you'll see the 2030 targets in this country pushed out as people realize it's not achievable, it's not affordable, and in the face of what China, Indonesia, and India are doing, it's an act of the most extraordinary self-harm.
I want to add another data point to the list that you mentioned there, which is that there's a housing shortage, especially for renters in the UK, but the government's making it extremely difficult for landlords to provide housing by having all these renewable energy-related targets and constraining the supply, and also adding to the cost of providing those houses.
The rental market's in problems already. Changes to council tax, changes to tax allowable expenditure, and tenant rights being extended. And already there are people withdrawing properties from the rental housing market. Now, Mr. Gove, the brilliant Mr. Gove, he of nightclubbing, bopping fame, has said that by 2028, rental properties have to be net zero compliant. And if you've got a property that was built before the 1970s or 80s, you are looking at a really, maybe difficult to say, but let's say £20,000 to £30,000 is probably what you're going to have to spend in terms of insulation, heat pumps, etc. And I think we're headed for a disaster, actually, in the rental market. I think the homelessness crisis is about to get very much worse. And once again, it's a government target that they will have to scrap. They're going to have to scrap all of this. They're just away with the fairies.
The interesting side of this is that people are connecting all of this to net zero now. It seems to be net zeros in the headlines, and therefore that is the thing that's going to get the attention and the blame for a lot of these policies. The part of this that I don't understand, Nigel, is that the science on climate change is settled. They can't push back those targets without admitting that they're going to destroy the planet. So how are they going to do it?
Well, you're right. I mean, it was Blair, of course, that was really one of the first global leaders in about 2000 to say the science is settled. There is no need for any debate. We've sussed all this out. Yeah, that they are in a pickle with this. They are in a terrible, but they're very good, aren't they? I mean, when I was a kid watching Blue Peter, scientific consensus was we were heading for an ice age. So they're actually, because they have no morals at all, these people, they're actually able to turn on a sixpence. And yeah, they can say that the data's become more encouraging or something like that. Yeah, they can't do both. You're absolutely right.
So they'll fudge it somehow. Let's move on then to the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which the UK is supposedly going to join. I have no idea whether you think this is a good thing or a bad one.
Well, I think free trade's a good thing, provided it takes place between countries that are on a roughly comparable level, where you can't be unfairly and violently undercut by state subsidy, etc. So, the principle of free trade, removing barriers, is a good thing. And the upside, of course, is that the Trans-Pacific Partnership, in terms of the size of market, is vast. It goes very much along with post-Brexit global Britain that we've talked about many times before. There's a danger, and that is harmonization. It's the extent to which you have to change what you do in order to suit another market. Now, if I'm selling, if I'm manufacturing a washing machine and selling it into a Pacific country, of course I have to meet their standards. But if the standards I have to meet to sell my product to them are then the standards I have to impose for selling products in my country, well, then you find that a project of global trade becomes a project of globalism. And this is very much what happened with the dream of the common market. It looked a great idea, and in the end, it became about homogenization, harmonization, pasteurization, and in the end, it became anti-competitive. So we have to watch that carefully. The real upside, of course, would be that it takes us further and further away from the European Union, that it begins to end some of the irrational arguments about rejoining. So look, I'm going to give it a welcome with a note of caution that it needs to be about reducing barriers and not about political, economic, and legislative harmonization. But I think overall, it's a 6.5, 7 out of 10.
There was a comment that it makes joining the EU impossible once we've joined the Trans-Pacific Partnership. I don't fully understand this. I'm assuming it's because we can't align with both in terms of the regulatory standards of the EU and also... Is that what the target...
Yeah, I mean, the upside of a degree of alignment with Trans-Pacific is that it makes it impossible to rejoin the EU. The downside is I don't want to swap one regulatory regime outside the control of our democratic fingertips for another. So, look, we've got to watch it carefully, but I think we're in the right place.